Black Doctors Podcast, Season 6.
Hello, welcome back to the Black Doctors Podcast. I'm Steven, your host. Excited to continue on with the non-hostile takeover of the show by T4D, an incredible organization that's doing so much to increase diversity within the healthcare workforce. This podcast is sponsored by Picmonic. In 2011, two medical students came up with the ingenious idea to combine medical education with unforgettable characters and ridiculously memorable stories. Featuring over 35,000 high-yield facts and graphics, Picmonic has helped over 600,000 students improve exam scores and perform better clinically. Picmonic has resources for pre-med and medical students, as well as other healthcare professions. Check out the show notes for a link to their website. Mention the podcast when you subscribe. With Picmonic, you can study less, but remember more. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Cameron Matthews. He's going to be our host for today.
I love it. Thank you so much, Stephen. Yes, T4D, Tour for Diversity in Medicine, is extremely excited to be doing this takeover. This is our second episode, and today we're going to be changing up a little bit of perspective, where we're going to be talking about mentorship, the importance thereof, and why it's been so critical in pretty much all of the mentors on T4D, all of our lives, but particularly the three of us today. We're going to have a great conversation for you guys. I'm Dr. Cameron Matthews again. I am a family physician currently located in Washington, D.C., and I have been with T4D from the very beginning. I'm one of the founders and directors, and just have been absolutely just blown away by the fact that this actually has worked. I'll just say it like that. So I'm going to allow my friends to introduce themselves as well. Dr. Williams, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I'm excited to be here and be in conversation with you, beautiful Black women physicians, changing the face of medicine.
There we go.
I am an acute care surgeon out of the University of Washington in Seattle, and I have been with T4D for, I don't know how many years now, but it's definitely been over a decade, I think.
It's been a bit.
Oh my gosh. Time flies when you're having fun. So excited to be here.
Love it. Dr. Freeman.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Brandy Freeman. I am an academic general pediatrician at the University of Colorado School of Medicine. And I've been with T4D from the very beginning. I was in the car when they came up with the idea and have been on the road ever since. So I'm really excited to be here.
I love it. These are two of my sisters in every way. And let me take a few moments just to describe Tour for Diversity in Medicine for our listeners who may not be as familiar with it. We are a nonprofit organization that is really focused on bringing the concept of medicine, the concept of healthcare to the students that need to learn about it most. We are obviously focused on diversifying the workforce, but really what our goal is with T4D is to make sure that we are finding those students that maybe don't have that right advising or that mentoring, or who may not be connected with that academic medical center. We're going out to those campuses around the country to find them, to inspire them, and to really cultivate them along the path into medicine, dentistry, and pharmacy. We're actually multifocal in that sense. We've been around for 10 years. We've been to 27 states. And obviously now our virtual programming for the past couple of years has just exploded, and we're very happy about that. So definitely check us out. I'll say it again at the end, but definitely check us out all across social media. We're at Tour, the number 4 diversity, across every possible platform. All right, guys, let's jump into this. Today's topic is specifically focused on mentorship, and this is something we clearly value. We even call ourselves the mentors on T4D. Let's open it up. What does a good mentor actually do for you as an individual? I know for myself, a good mentor actually helps me like level set, helps me figure out what my problems are when I can't even really maybe even put words behind it at the time. Like a mentor helps me think through it, but doesn't give me the answer, helps me think through it. What do you ladies think? What's a good mentor do for you?
So I would say a good mentor supports, but also challenges you. So whether it's they're helping you find opportunities, helping you think through opportunities, they're not going to necessarily just give you the answer and tell you what to do. But they're going to help you figure it out, help you mark your path and support you in doing that. And then help you really think about the hard things that like you can do hard things and help you make sure that you do them to make yourself the most successful.
Yeah, I want to add to that. I completely agree with both of you, Dr. Freeman and Dr. Matthews. And I think a lot of times it's hard for people to make that distinction around, identifying what a mentor versus an advisor does, right? So when we think about advisors, pre-med advisors, et cetera, there's like a rubric, a template that is set out, and they say, okay, these are the requirements to get into this professional school, or these are requirements to get into graduate school, or these are things that we know that is the path that the majority of people take. So we're going to help you meet this checklist. Whereas mentors are specific to you and your specific needs. And those needs change over time, right? So you have a mentor at one point in your life for one specific thing, meaning I have a research mentor that helps me really figure out what type of research do I want to do within my academic career? How do I best achieve my research goals? But that mentor isn't the same mentor who helps me think about my clinical practice. How do I grow it? What things do I need to do? How should I be targeting that? Which is different than the mentor that helps me understand my personal life and how it engages with my career. And how can I optimize those two? And so you can have multiple mentors. There isn't this one person that fits neatly all the boxes, but multiple people that are going to help you navigate all the different aspects of who you are and what's unique to you, right? And so an advisor maybe gives you the population health, like that bird's eye view of saying this is what everybody does traveling along this path. Yep. But the mentor is going to be that precision medicine, right? That really what's unique about you, that and how can I help you achieve your specific goals? Not what everybody else is doing, but what's unique to you and how can I help you achieve those goals? And it's important to note that if that mentor isn't helpful in those paths, it's okay to end that relationship and find somebody else who does help you meet those goals. But it's really specific to who you are. And that's really when you have a good mentor that can help you meet you where you are and help you grow to that next step you're trying to meet.
Oh my gosh, leave it to Dr. Williams. An advisor is that population health and a mentor is that precision medicine. I absolutely love that. And I couldn't agree with you more. I think about, we have a handful, 3 now, advisors on the tour, right? We purposefully wanted to stack the deck, right, in every way so that when we're traveling across the country, when we're talking to students on Zoom, that we have those differing sort of roles, right? And we can offer that sort of feedback. And I absolutely love that all of us even still turn to our advisors, right? Like our 3 advisors on the tour, we still turn to them because there's those fundamentals exactly about the application process. Perhaps even there's those fundamentals about the application process, perhaps even, questions that we may have that have changed, right? Like when did I apply to med school? Like that, I do not even want to say that on this podcast, but it was a good bit of time ago and it has changed, right? And so those advisors are the ones that are keeping track of what you need to do and are going to have that perspective of more than just medicine, right? All of us are actual, practicing physicians, but there's a lot of other opportunities out there. Those advisors need to be also kind of broad spanning. So yes, across the different opportunities in healthcare. I love it. I think a mentor for me, I think we often want to find someone that we connect with, right? That, maybe, I have obviously, maybe not obviously, but I have a handful of Black mentors. I absolutely love it. But I have one, older white guy, that I absolutely have gotten so much out of this relationship. I have learned so much from him about how to be a leader, about how to manage, change management, to manage transformation. And I love that he's been a mentor in my career. And I love that I can actually talk to him about racial issues as well. Like we've bridged that whole gap. It's not uncomfortable in any sort of way. And that's the one thing I'd love to hear if you guys, like, do you have that mentor that, maybe was a surprise, right? Like all of a sudden you're like, oh, this person, I'm really excited to connect. I was totally surprised to connect with this one mentor that I'm thinking of. And now we are the dearest of friends. But I clearly look towards him or advice. What about you guys? Any mentors that just completely surprised you?
Yeah, actually, my research mentor, she's retired. So she is, my research mentor is now, she's 90, 92.
Wow.
90.
Love that. Love
Yeah, and she's retired. But I realized retired mentors have they're an asset because they got a whole lot of time and they're not working anymore. So they're there just to support you. So it's been really wonderful, like just in terms of, now she always thinks I have more time than I actually do because she's like, well, why aren't you working 24 hours a day? And I'm like, because I can't do that. But it's been really great. We were actually introduced by our foundation at the hospital, actually, because I do research in the area that she used to work in. But it was really more so supposed to be to benefit the hospital, and it ended up benefiting me. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's so wonderful what you speak to, Dr. Freeman, about that bridging that generational almost divide, right? And one thing I've encountered, especially now I am functioning as PI for our SHPP site at the University of Washington, which is wonderful, right? To be in that mentorship role. I participated in programs like this when I was an undergrad, so to now have that come full circle and be the PI, right? It's just amazing. And this is a common question of from students about, finding mentors and what does that look like? And especially now with a lot of the reckoning that we've had in our social political spaces around race in medicine in particular. And there is a big pull from our students of color wanting to make for sure they have a mentor who comes from a racial ethnic background. And that should be the only people they're receiving mentorship from. And a lot of times we have to remind them we're still so small in numbers in medicine, right? And while we are making our presence felt by using things like social media to be able to reach a broader audience and be able to engage in these conversations, you have to recognize who's going to be on the ground with you and who's going to be able to help you in that day to day. And it may not be a person who comes from your same racial ethnic background. It may not be a person who represents your same gender identity, but that doesn't mean that they don't have your back and they can't help you navigate the things that you need to navigate. Because the most important thing is that you want to have someone who is either, traverse that path before you so they can make that a little bit easier for you, who have some sort of skill set already in the space that you're hoping to enter, and who you resonate and can connect with. And as Dr. Matthews just said, you'll be surprised by who that person can be. And when I think about the individuals who have propped me up and mentored me and helped me elevate my ability to navigate and grow within academic medicine. Yes, I have countless Black physicians that I can think of that continue through Society of Black Academic Surgeons that I'm a member of, and have gotten leadership opportunities through that. But even within my own space right now, I have a white woman and an older Latino male. And both of them went to bat for me, right? They made for sure that my, not just mentorship, but, and I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit, but sponsorship, right? Putting my name up in spaces, right?
Yes.
Sponsorship, right? They're sitting at tables that I don't even know exist, right? You talk about, have a seat at the table. Heck, I don't even know some of these tables exist out there, right? But they are already in these very advanced leadership positions. And they're speaking my name in rooms that I don't even know exist. And I'm getting these additional opportunities. And it was because of their both belief in me and that forward thinking that some of these mentors and sponsors, they can see a path that you are already discounting yourself for, right? You may be dealing with imposter syndrome, stereotype threat. You're not feeling like, oh, I'm worthy. And they already see your potential and they're speaking that into existence for you, right? Like your grandma used to pray for you and make sure that you go walk into those spaces when you don't even know that she's praying for you every day, right? Right? And so you have to recognize that there are people who are going to be rooting for you. You don't want to minimize or discount those relationships before they're even able to materialize and show benefit. You don't want to discount anyone who comes in your path. You never know what somebody's able to offer to help advance your career. And so you have to be open to any and all relationships because as Dr. Matthews said, you just never know.
You never know. You never know. And honestly, I was, he was technically my boss, not and actually several of my mentors have been my boss's boss, which I gotta say is absolutely fabulous because when my boss is tripping, they step in. I love it. And I try not to call that card too much, right? I try not to, cash that in can you check him? But actually, it ends up being quite a natural and organic sort of thing in both situations. I'm wondering if not only have you ladies had not just someone that surprised you, but the relationship surprised you. Like Dr. Freeman, you mentioned you got connected through your university, but sometimes these mentoring relationships just become that organic thing, right? Where you're not paired up, you're not matched up. But sometimes for students, for professionals, that can be awkward, right? Like that can be like a little, like we don't know each other, but we're kind of forced to get to know each other. As opposed to more of an organic, we get to know each other, we met somewhere, we had a great conversation, we stayed in touch, that sort of thing. Have you guys had some of those kind of organic relationships?
You know, I have one that comes straight to mind, and it is one of those that came out of left field that I didn't think would exist. And I know that the person would mind me sharing this story, but it's actually the dean of our institution, dean and CEO of UW Medicine, Dr. Paul Ramsey, Dean Ramsey. And the way in which we crossed paths was I was a medical student. He was dean when I was still in medical school. And, you know, they highlight a medical student that's doing good in the community. He includes that in his annual address to the School of Medicine and to the entire UW Medicine community. And so my name was somehow brought to him as a student highlight for the year. And so he got information through his administrator or something and highlighted me. And then afterward, just by learning about actually the work that I was doing, requested to meet with me. And it was just a casual meeting. We spoke. He learned more about me, learned what I was doing. And since that time, he would just do it just check-ins every now and then. And then over time, we really did just morph into this friendship. He connected me with a mentor in surgery that ended up being like my mentor and sponsor, you know, offered up opportunities, but it really did morph into a friendship where now like I'm invited to his retirement party, like with his close friends. Right. And it's just like, it's beautiful what it transformed into. And I never would have guessed. I would call the dean of our institution, you know, a friend, older white guy in family medicine. But to have seen that relationship evolve has just been amazing and something I never would have guessed.
Yeah. I love that you can consider it a friendship as well too, because I think of this one mentor as a friend as well too, and it brings a level of comfort, right? Of relaxation where we can joke around. I mean, he was again my boss's boss. So like I still had like a level of formality, and we were at the VA, right? So like it's damn near military. So I'm saying sir. Like, but that's just a level of formality that's more just out of respect as opposed to, you know, a separation between you. I still call him sir. I don't even care. Like I just respect him that much. You know, even, you know, he's a general. Like I'm gonna call him sir. Like, you know, but I love that I know about his family. I love that he always asks about my family. And I see that as so much more than just a professional relationship. So I'm kind of honored to call him a friend.
Yeah.
Love it. All right. What every single one of us coming through training, school, all of this, even now, have unfortunately been the receiver of maybe some bad advice from a mentor or maybe from an advisor. We can even expand it. But do you? I'm trying to think of some bad advice. I know I've had some, but do you guys had any examples of some bad advice given to you? Because I think definitely what we have heard every single stop on the tour, right, are students that we know for a fact just got absolutely horrible advice, either from their advisor or mentor. What's some that either you guys had or that you've heard?
I had an advisor tell me to kind of basically not follow my passion. This was in my academic career, where I really liked doing leadership stuff. And at one point in time, I met with him and he was like, "Oh, you need to wait till you're later in your career to do that." And that's doing the leadership stuff, doing these spaces that are not like the traditional academic path are more where I find joy and passion. And, you know, I consider it bad advice because if I listened to him, I wouldn't be in my current position. I wouldn't have, I just got promoted, but I'm an associate vice chair of our department.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so
Wait, say that louder.
that was
Congrats.
because I kept doing the
She buried that a little bit.
Thank you. But no, it's one of those things. Like my path was not going to be his, and he could only see his path as the correct one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's, if someone is trying to like redirect you away from something that you're like, no, I feel this in my heart. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is how I am different. It's how I contribute. I think that's bad advice.
Right? I think that's clutch, Dr. Freeman, what you're talking about right there, because that's what mentors are supposed to do, right? Like they should meet you where you're at and help you ascend, not try and make you conform to somebody else's idea of what success looks like. What is your idea of success and how do we help you reach that? And that is what defines a good mentor and mentor relationship, where they can separate themselves from the scenario and say, we are talking about you, not me, not Jane or John over here, like you. And how do we help you be successful? I think that similar to a lot of other pre-meds, I've heard it, you take it depending on where you're at in training. When you're in med school, I hear about, or trying to get into med school and I'm pre-med, getting the advice about how you have to be a science major, which is the ultimate biggest, worst advice ever, right?
You know me. That's the worst.
Right? the worst advice, you have to be a science major. No, you don't. Right? Or that you have to have these specific extracurriculars in order to look better to medical school.
Or you have to have research.
Right. And every single thing I did was in education and in healthcare workforce diversification. That was it. Nothing was in any of those traditional spaces regarding healthcare or working in a nursing home, et cetera, that people are sort of believed to have to follow this certain path. And I remember when I was in undergrad, my advisor actually dropped me because I was working full time and I was coming from, we're going to laugh about it now. It was hard work at the time, but I worked at the Adidas store in San Francisco while I was trying to pay for my college tuition, right? So I'm trying to make it in San Francisco traffic back to campus to meet with my advisor. And I think I was 15 minutes late. And when I got into there, she said, I don't think you're taking this seriously. I think we need to end this relationship. And instead of recognizing like the barriers that I faced as a student who was working full time, did not have economic resources for my family, but here I am, in this private institution. I transferred there after Hurricane Katrina. And instead of taking the time to get to know me and my barriers and saying, how can I help? How can we help you navigate or reach your goals? It was a blanket, this isn't working. You need to find somebody else because you must not be taking this seriously, right? And so that was to my benefit.
Was that crushing though when you like?
Oh, at the time, definitely, definitely. And that's how you destroy people, right? Like when you think about students who are just like, well, I guess I can't. This isn't for me. This path isn't for me. I don't have an advisor anymore. I don't know what I'm going to do. And by the grace of God, I had a wonderful Black woman mentor who I was able to turn to, who still, helped me navigate that time. And I took gap years and I figured out my path, but it was because I had other mentors that are able to fill those gaps and recognize the barriers that I faced and help to kind of root me on to that next step. But then even when you think about like going into surgery as a woman, I heard all of the kind of stereotypical, you can't go into surgery as a woman because you'll never have kids or get married, right? And I had a wonderful white woman mentor who pulled me aside and, said, surgery seems to be what you really enjoy. You did great on your rotation. Are you applying into surgery for residency? And when I told her all those things I'd heard, she's like, well, I'm married and I have twins at home. Does that change your perspective at all? And she took me under her wings and made for sure that, so there's so many times where people will give you advice based on misconceptions or what they believe is their truth, right? Or a truth. And you just have to, as Dr. Freeman said, I can't agree with you more. Stay true to your passions. And not only will you do well, you will achieve greatness.
Yes. Love it. I had the same, but thankfully I never really considered him a mentor. It was just one of those kind of like exploratory conversations that I thought he was going to become a mentor because he was one of those elusive MDJDs out there before, I was trying to make that decision. And now there's a good number of us, so I'm proud of that. But this guy is exactly the same thing, Dr. Freeman. He clearly was bitter about his own experience. He clearly couldn't see that I was aiming for an experience that was different from him. But yet that, there were similarities that he could help with. It just came across. And it was one conversation, thank goodness. And even in that conversation, I was just like, yeah, I even remember the word bitter popped up in my head. That's why I keep saying that. I was just like, oh, dude, just because you're mad doesn't mean you should turn me away from my path. And so thankfully, it was an irrelevant conversation. Ultimately, I'm very happy about that. I think some of the best advice, though, let's turn it positive. I would say one of my other mentor who I've been referring to, who was also my boss's boss, a Black man who has mentored a good number of people really across the country. He's phenomenal. He helped me really think through the fact that I knew I was going to take my career in a different direction. And so for him to tell me, never close yourself off to any opportunities that come to you. Even though you may be kind of grounded in one position and think you're on one path and think this is the only direction and you've already made decisions that maybe you feel are kind of permanent. He said, never close yourself off for opportunities because, sometimes you got to zig and sometimes you got to zag. And you never know when your path could zag. And just because you've made a decision in the past doesn't mean you can't make maybe not the opposite decision, but one that seems to be out of line, but ultimately works for you. And when he finally said that, I was just like, oh, wow, I'm comfortable. I'm much more comfortable thinking about changing roles, changing direction. Cause he's been thinking like that. And it was great to have that perspective. I thought that was some of the best advice ever.
Hey, it's Stephen, host of the Black Doctors Podcast. I hope you're enjoying this episode. I want to take a minute to talk about TrueLearn. They are a sponsor of the Black Doctors Podcast, and we're thankful for them investing in our mission. TrueLearn is a company that specializes in test preparation. They provide a data-driven approach to help students prepare for their examinations. They provide resources for those in the medical licensure exam process, or the COMLEX, the USMLE, and even for physician assistants. And they also provide resources for subspecialty exam prep. Specifically for those in medical school, they offer individual NBME subject exam smart banks, and they cover the rotations that include neurology, emergency medicine, psychiatry, pediatrics, surgery, OBGYN, family medicine, and internal medicine. 8 different subspecialties. As a special bonus for those of you that listen to the show, TrueLearn is offering a discount. To receive that discount, visit their website. When you sign up for one of their products, use the code BTHPodcast, so Black Doctors Podcast. There's also going to be a link in the show notes. Check that out. Everybody loves saving money. And now let's get back to today's episode.
Yeah, I can't agree with that more. Dr. Freeman, I can see your face. You're brewing on something. I will say it was similar with my mentor, Dr. Matthews. I would say that it was what does success look like for you? Mm-hmm. And I think that was the one thing that my mentor, as far as like a very positive thing that I learned from a really good mentor, was really owning my story and owning my future. Because so much of what we do, a lot of times, and I fight this, and I tell my medical students when they come to me, right? So we really infantilize adults, unfortunately, right? Like we take very high achieving, high performing students coming out of undergrad, and then we put them in med school. And then we start this process of saying, oh, you don't know anything. You have to learn all over again. Yeah. You're at the bottom.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And I despise that mentality. I feel like there's a much better way that we can build up physicians besides this idea that you have to start from the bottom and work your way up. It's like, well, then why was I the brightest thing ever that you were recruiting me to come to your institution if I am now somehow at the bottom of the barrel and have to learn so much? Like, we all have something to learn, right? Mm-hmm. But I think there's a much better way to engage and to build up. And I feel like that's where I lost a lot of my critical thinking. Wasn't going through my process, because so much of what was told to you was that you have to learn from all these other great individuals, right? And I stopped really really believing that I had something critical to say and that, I needed to just give all this deference to all these other smarter people around me who've just been in medicine for so much longer. But I think now we're having a shift in medical education where we're actually starting to understand that there's so much to learn from these generations that are much more further along in understanding like gender identity, much further along in understanding racism and race in medicine, to which they're teaching the teachers, right? Like they're teaching the medical schools how to engage in these conversations now. And I think that owning like the expertise that I have in sitting in some of those spaces, whereas before I would be so afraid to push back or let my voice be heard. And my mentor really just pushed me to say, like, you are the one who defines your career and you are the one who have so much to offer. And you need to stop discounting yourself for these opportunities. When things come across your desk, I want to see them and let me be the one to tell you no, because you're not giving yourself the credit and the value that you actually have.
Wow.
And so I think having that person who actually spoke life into what I was trying to do and really gave me that vote of confidence when I was still dealing with a lot of imposter syndrome allowed me to accelerate and move a lot faster early in my career than I think if I had been left to my own devices, because I think I would have counted myself out a lot more than having a mentor who could look from a bird's eye view and really see all the potential that was there and what things I needed to help push me to grow. But what things I was already over prepared for that I wouldn't have actually given myself the credit and given myself the opportunity to step into those spaces to lead.
I love that you had that relationship. My goodness, think about the world without Dr. Williams. Oh my God. Oh, Dr. Freeman. Oh, there we go.
Yeah. I think for me, it was something simple that a mentor said to me once. They were like, you can do all things. You just don't have to do them all at the same time.
Say that.
And for me, I was like, that's really good because I'm really bad at saying no. And so trying to do all these things, she's like, you can do all of those things, but just not at the same time. And so I've just always taken that with me as I try to figure out what I'm doing, when I'm doing it, how I'm going to do it. But I agree with both of you too. I think,
oh, I love that one. I still feel like sometimes I gotta do everything at once. I might need to be told that every once in a while. Don't have to do everything. I love that. When we think about the many students that we've seen, the students that have joined the tour, right? We were talking about, we've been at this, 10 years now. The students that have joined the tour and have now matured, have gone through residency and are now faculty themselves, right? When we think about the residents or the fellows that we've precepted and mentored along the way, and then we would think about where we are, right? Like, let's just think. I know I'm stretching here, but like this is a marathon, as we've described, right?
Yeah,
many times, a continuum, right? And how do you think your view of mentoring, maybe for yourself or maybe from some of your mentees, has your view of mentoring changed along that continuum? Like, do you think I'm trying to think of myself as a student, as a pre-med, the difficulty that you feel and probably, yes, a little bit of that imposter, but I almost feel like as a pre-med, it was pre-imposter. I just didn't even know what I wanted to be, let alone think that I was ready for it or able to do it, right? And so I think early on, I wanted to be told more. And then I think as a medical student, I probably wanted to be maybe exposed to more. And then as a resident, it was really more, you know what? I'm so tired. Stop telling me what to do. My faculty bosses me around so much. Sorry, y'all, if you're listening, but you did. And like, I think more as a resident, it was really more, like, can you just help me figure out my life to be a little bit easier? And now as the professional, it's more, oh my gosh, I need more of an executive coach. Like, help me through these scenarios. Like, I feel like now I'm a lot more specific when I go to my mentor. I have this issue, like and I need help with this one relationship I have, this decision that I need to make. Like, I feel that progression over my path. I don't know if you ladies can describe that same thing, but I see it for myself that it's changed over time.
I would agree. I mean, I'm a pediatrician. I feel like you just described development, like just in general. I was like, that's completely logical. I was like, that's how that works. You are now an adult.
That's
Congratulations,
amazing.
you're grown up.
Not yet,
But
not yet.
I think definitely. I was like, well, but I think it's one of those things where I think it's how your mentors work. Like whether it's your circle of mentors and the different people that you bring into your life to be able to serve in that role, they're serving a different purpose at a different time because you're a different person at a different time. I mean, I had the fortunate, wonderful time of knowing you 20 years ago when you thought you didn't know what you were doing. I would say, I don't think that was true. And I was like, she was always really driven. So I'm like, she didn't know what she was doing. Who knew what I was doing? But, but you're a different person now, right? The experiences you've gone through and what you would need and how that would manifest in terms of a mentoring relationship or a coaching relationship, I think it's completely different. It makes perfect sense. I think I'm seeing that in myself too. I think for now, like right now, my goals are very focused on leadership and trying to figure out what those next steps in my career are. So I meet with my research mentors and that sort of thing. And I have a career mentor I meet with, but the person I probably talk to more than anything is my leadership coach, who really is helping me work through these actual decisions within my job and how do I present myself as a leader. So
professional listening to this podcast, and you feeling lost, I'm gonna give a big plug for Dr. Kimmy Dole, Black woman who does career coaching for women in academic medicine. Yes,
wait, you using the same Dr. Freeman?
No, Kemi.
Kemi, Kemi,
Kemi.
we know. She's talking about that.
Kemi.
Career coaching for women in academic medicine.
Oh, Kemi. I love the people that we have come through with our mentoring and that's amazing. Good. I'm glad. Oh. I'm ready.
Sorry.
No, I was like, oh my gosh, Kemi. Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah, no, you know what? I think that's the other. I mean, I hate to. Although we keep saying this, the past year or so with the pandemic, the silver lining, right? There's so many good things that came out of the difficulty of the past couple of years, right? But that, I think there is so much strength, obviously, in who we can find locally and who we can connect with. But I'm also now connecting with a whole bunch of people in a very different way because it's just part of our norm, right? That I'm connecting with people all around the country when I don't think it was as prevalent. Like, at least for me, I think I was more focused locally. But now that it's just as easy to jump on a Zoom, I feel like our culture has changed to accept that within our profession as well. So yes, please, everyone send a message to Kemi because she's at University of Washington and you can find her. I love it. No, so one of the experiences I have enjoyed, but I'm kind of at the beginning of. I just joined this network. It's kind of LinkedIn based called Chief. Have you guys, ladies, have you heard of Chief? All right. So it's only, I don't know if they tweet at all, but it's really social media based. LinkedIn based at that. And it is a startup for women leaders, typically C-suite or VP kind of manager level. And it's this huge national network. You get paired up, not that I should be promoting other organizations or anything, but you get paired up into these groups where you do peer coaching. And so I am now in a group. There's 8 of us. We're kind of East Coast based. I'm the only Black, and that's fine. In my group, there's tons across the Chief network, and we have an app for Chief. And so you can find everybody. I found all the Soros branding. Yes, it's all up in the house. There's a healthcare group. There's women with children group. There's all these different groups where you can connect, but then you get matched up in your core group. And supposedly they do this kind of, it wasn't a personality test, but supposedly they try to connect people who they think might really need each other at that time. And so I'm going through this peer coaching experience now. And I bring this up because like I'm clearly paying a very lot of money for this experience, which I love. I'm loving these women. But I also think to the tour and how we do, I think, a significant amount of peer coaching. I think it's one of the strengths of joining our family, as we call ourselves, right? That, we all at one point or another have called each other up and asked for advice or asked for how to handle stuff or written each other letters or have, say, oh, I have this speaking engagement. Who wants to take this? Kind of almost that, I guess, sponsorship sort of way. And actually, we have even sponsored each other, putting people's names out there for projects and positions and committees and things like that. I think that's one thing that's not as probably prominently discussed, the strength that we get from our peers as far as mentoring. And I can think to one peer mentor that I had in choosing the job that I was going to take when I was leaving Chicago. Huge, major geographic decision, for me, but also wound up being a big career shift. And his advice to me was more about how he had made a decision. It wasn't so much like he was like, I don't know how to advise you on to make this decision. It was to help me walk through my decision and give me almost a rubric of how to make the decision and end up being completely right. I loved it. And then there's so many other examples just within the tour. Is that something you guys even talk about, like with your mentees? Like, what are you getting from each other? I feel like there's more we could even be doing formally on the tour as much as we do already. But are you talking about this with your mentees as well? I feel like this peer coaching, peer mentoring needs to be more part of the conversation because we can learn a lot from each other about ourselves, about each other, right?
No, I think that's a great point. I can't say that it's something that I've really been talking about within like my mentees. It's something that our institution talks about a lot, whether we've had some coaching programs, some peer support programs, that sort of thing that have been developing by kind of our wellness team and that sort of thing. But as I think about it, I think it is one of those places, like part of my job for our department is building community. And so in some sense, I try to do that amongst the residents and have them build a way to support each other. But I think it is something that could be very intentional in terms of like, whether it's having peer groups. A friend of ours, Dr. Tyler Smith, who's at the University of Kansas, actually had started something like that within pediatric academic medicine, where we had these peer mentorship calls once a month. And it was Black women. Well, we did let the men in. So it was Black pediatricians. Which is there are a lot more women in pediatrics than men, who would get on the phone once a month and just help each other through things. And so I think it's definitely something that we should be emphasizing more for this like next generation, because I definitely can see where I benefited from it myself.
The people in your network who are going through the same thing that you are as far as timeline and where they're at in life. And you can learn so much from what other people are doing, learn from opportunities that they are getting and how that might also benefit you, sharing information, learning how you study, like learning how somebody else studies or processes information. You learn so much from that. So there's so many different things, especially as you think about that continuum that Dr. Matthews was referencing earlier, like depending on where you're at in life, you can learn so much from the peers that are going through those same exact things. Because if you think about it, like people in certain age groups are usually struggling through the same things around that time. That's why that near peer mentorship goes so far, because you have people who relate, right? And instead of that generational gap where, there are people who are in a different point in their life. And so maybe they can have that full future thinking. But whereas people who are in your same sort of age range, near peers are, as they're going through those same things, you also just have a lot of that camaraderie. Just if nothing else, you can just have somebody who can say, I understand, I'm struggling through the same thing. Let's learn together.
Thank you. The co-struggle is a necessary recognition, right? That it's hard, that, we may make decisions, that might not necessarily be best in retrospect, but now, hey, we're doing this together. And yeah, I agree. I think that it's a different source of support I've found. that is, I think goes back to what we're talking about as far as mentors being friends, right? That it's a different, there's not that hierarchy, right? There's not like as much as that
Yeah.
hierarchy can come down and often will when it's a particularly strong mentoring relationship, right? But that peer level, it's never there in the first place. So it's a different dynamic. And I agree. I think it's something, that we need to be emphasizing more, especially for this younger generation, particularly when not that any of us want to recognize that it's more difficult for those who are coming after us, but I do think it's more difficult for students and residents, going through this path as well too. And particularly from a mental health standpoint, particularly from, just a societal standpoint, they need each other as well as peer mentors, peer coaches.
Correct.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have a few more minutes, and I wanted to close it out with, I didn't want to bring this up first, but the number one question we always get on the tour, right, about mentoring. It's the hard one. It's the one we've kind of touched on a little bit. But where do you go to find a mentor? How do you find one? Right? It's the number one question we get across the board. And, I'm sure, I feel like every time I get asked this, the student is always just looking at me or thinking as they're reading it on the screen, like, really? That's all you're going to tell me? But like, I feel like I can never get a really impressive answer here, but we're going to impress them today. Where do we actually find mentors? Where do we send students to really, get what we've all been describing during this talk?
So wonderful mentors, ready, waiting, willing to help guide you into that next phase of success in your life. I feel like that's the drop the mic answer for anybody listening in. T4D is where it's at.
There we go.
Yep. But in addition to that, I think that something that we all stated that is very clear is that you don't close yourself off. I say the better part of that question is, how do you not get a mentor? And it's not by not being open to one, because you might miss the mentor that's sitting right in front of you, ready, willing to help you, because you think it is one specific thing or it should look a certain way. And it is those surprises that get you, those individuals that you didn't think or you wouldn't believe would be able to identify you across racial lines, gender identity, etc. That will be your biggest mentor, your biggest cheerleader, and help you through those most difficult things. So, number one, don't close yourself off. And number two, don't be afraid of a cold call email. That cold email from somebody who you don't know, but you read something about them and their path issues you, something just, sat with you that person might be a good one for you to connect with. Listen to your gut and reach out. You never know. That's how I met one of the strongest mentors I have. It's just through a cold email. And we are the best of friends this day.
See, I was going to say, be born with one, because I was. I tell this story on the tour a lot. That my first mentor, who still mentors me to this day, was my pediatrician, who met me the day I was born in the nursery. And he likes to say, he told me to be a pediatrician then, and I just clearly followed directions really well. But I think you could take that also to mean that just because, like, whatever place you are in life, don't forget the places you've been. I was a Girl Scout, and there was like this saying where you say, make new friends, but keep the old. Some are silver, others are gold. And so really thinking about like those past experiences that you've had, those people, and don't just think you have to just keep looking for somebody new and whatever. Just think about those people you've had experiences with before, and how can they be a part of your life and support you in what you're trying to do.
I love it. I will speak on thinking about the cold call emails, though, Estelle, that I have gotten over time. Some of them are interesting. I'll describe them as interesting. Some of them are, so I'll just say it outright, and I'd love to know you guys' response. I have gotten a handful of the ones that are literally just, my name is, I go to this school, I would like a mentor. Can you mentor me? Like, literally, that's it. What do you guys think about that? Because it turns me off. Does it turn you guys off? I'm seeing Dr. Freeman say, yeah. It may not turn to anybody else. I wanted to get into that. Yeah.
No, it's hard. Like I work in an academic institution. I have patients who are like, I want to be a doctor. And I'm like, okay. I think sometimes what I struggle with is when I just get those like cold emails is, do they actually know what it means? Because I have students that I work with that are medical students, PA students, like across the board. And then, you add in the patients, and I mentor some of them. And sometimes it's like a one-time mentoring conversation. Other times it is, an actual relationship. There's one resident I'm working with now. I've been working with her for 6 years. And so, it's different types of relationships. And, sometimes I'm like, well, what are you exactly looking for? I have to keep in mind the developmental stage of who is emailing me, because, the email from a high school student is very different from the email from a medical student or from someone later. And so keeping that in mind, do they know what they're asking or what they're doing? And so I try to like taper my responses to that and to the context, and then kind of go from there.
Thank you for the pediatrics reminder. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's
that
so
developmental stage is so true.
Yeah.
Right. And honestly, I think, Dr. Matthews, what that shows me is like that person is in need of mentorship. If nothing else, like how to write a good email to reach out to somebody when you're asking for things. Right. And so I sit in the space of part of my FTE is doing this ecosystem programming and working with students. And so I always remind myself when I get those emails or even some of the terse ones, right? It's like, okay, this person definitely needs mentorship so they know how to engage and reach out. Right. And it's not my job to mentor everyone. I think that's, key what Dr. Freeman said. Like sometimes it's just that one call, right? Like I just have this one conversation, kind of lay the groundwork, figure out what their needs are. And I'm able to sometimes funnel them to somebody who I think will be a better fit that can help them, maybe form a better relationship. I'm not the mentor for everybody. And I think that's one thing I've learned over time as my idea of mentorship has evolved over time is I'm not the mentor for everybody, just like everybody isn't the mentor for me. And how can I be that bridge to help somebody, connect with somebody who would be a good person to help them along their path?
As always, Dr. Williams, brilliant. You're so true. I mean, we've even said that on the tour. Some of the schools that we've been to have been interesting dynamics to work with, and that has only reinforced they need us even more. They need us on their campus. And so you're exactly right. I think it's great that the students are showing the initiative and reaching out. And so, yeah, helping them along the way as they do that is our job. I love that. All right. With that, I am so grateful for my dear friends here for this great conversation. It always helps me. First of all, because we're all in 3 different time zones, I love connecting with y'all as little as we do, but as much as we can. I thank you guys so much for having this conversation. I thank Dr. Bradley for giving us the platform to do this. Again, Tour for Diversity in Medicine, we are here and just ready to connect with students. And so, Dr. Bradley, thank you for giving us this opportunity to do so.
Being able to hear this live. I'm sorry you all won't have the pleasure of hearing it live, but I was able to listen live. I'm so inspired. I know more about finding mentorship and sponsorship. Definitely some things I can work on. If Dr. Levinani was here, he would say, I hope you picked up those gems. There was quite a few gems that were shared.
I was trying to think of what he would say. He's good at summarizing the gems.
Oh, yes. Well, thank you all so much. And please don't be a stranger. If at any time you want to come in and talk about whatever is on your minds, the platform is yours. We're so happy to be partnering with Tour for Diversity. And a portion of the proceeds of the show will go to support them in their efforts to diversify medicine. Thank you so much for joining us, and tune in next week to hear more from their organization.
Thank you.